Good morning, guys. It's the morning of Saturday, August 23rd, and I played a tough one last night against 1783 from Germany. It was a real tough one. He was a really tactical player. I had to be very careful because, any misstep I made, he had a punishment for it or some sort of night fork or something 2-3 moves later that would have surfaced. So, those players are just extremely tactical. I'm probably like that too, but I just had to be very careful with him. But anyway, we get into the end game. I survived to the end game, but he makes the first real mistake of the game, and he goes knight to d8. And I know what you're thinking. Same thing that I am. Oh, game's over. Bishop e7 check. Knight or bishop fork. Game's over. But I'm going to get to the game position that explain why it's a lot more difficult than that. But yes, that is the first move. So we go bishop e7 check. He comes here, and I take the knight. And then he comes here. So he attacks both pawns. So pause your video for a couple seconds and think about what your next move would be, because it was very difficult here to figure out the correct sequence and, look at the position. So just pause your video for a couple seconds and I'll explain all the lines that were going through my head. So what was going through my head here is he's got two, outside pass pawns. He's got the one on the C4 square. He's got the one on the H5 square, and they're gonna be very difficult to stop. I mean, obviously I got a bishop, long ranging that can do that, but my thought process was if I took the pawn at H5 with my king, then I only had to worry about one pawn. But the flaw in that logic is his king is already attacking both my pawns. And if I end up with a bishop and a king versus a king, it's going to be a draw. I can't win. So, I also had the thought process of, I'll have the time potentially, but I need to run that F pawn. And, I was really 50-50 on my next move and ended up making the wrong move. So, it happens to us all. It's super frustrating. It's kicking myself for, getting a draw instead of a win. But this is what I did. I took out the H5 pawn first, thinking I would have the time, maybe to get my pawn up the board and stop his pawn, which is not smart because he just takes here. And then I played something like bishop to b6 and then rerouted it to e3 to stop his pawn from queening on c1. That's playing not to lose. That's not playing to win. And that's a wrong mindset. I was in a real tough game leading up to this point, so I think it had a little bit to do with it. Just not wanting to lose the game. And, that's also incorrect from a psychological point of view. But the computer showed that what I should have done was save at least one of the pawns. And I do have the time to stop both of those pawns with my bishop, and here's how. So I would push f4, and let's say he starts pushing that c pawn, and he goes c3. Now I can go f4, or f5 rather, and that's what I didn't see. I didn't see that you could just keep pushing, and then let's say he goes here to c2, because remember, he can't push the h pawn because my bishop covers the h4 square. Now I can go bishop g5, and now I don't have to worry about either of the pawns. Well, actually, here's the sequence that I had thought of is, okay, well, great. He's going to just push his h pawn, and if I take his h pawn, he's going to queen with the c pawn. But you just let him march down the h file, and then you march your pawn down the f file, and you queen before he does, and then you end up skewering his queen on h1. So let's go through that. Here, and he can't take it because then he queens on c1. Then I go here. He goes here, here, here. Queen, queen. But then my queen comes here with check, and he's not going to take the pawn on f2 because then I just take his queen. He doesn't get my queen back. So then he comes here check, boom. Now my bishop comes here. And now if he tries to take this pawn out, then I got f4, and that one's going to queen. So that's the sequence that I should have calculated in my head before, disregarding it. But very difficult. In-game tactics are very difficult. But that was the difference between a draw and a win. And I need to sharpen up my in-game tactics if I'm going to get anywhere to 2200. Have a good day, guys. See you in the next video.